Building a family can be a complicated, messy, lonely, and sometimes heartbreaking process. But you don't have to navigate this challenging journey alone.
Welcome to the All Paths podcast, where we support and celebrate all of the different ways there are to try to grow your family. We are your hosts, Kate and Emily from the nonprofit organization All Paths Family Building. And today we're talking with Jessica about her family's journey and her work in this space. Jessica, thank you for joining us today on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all the work and being so inclusive in what it means to grow a family.
Well, thank you. It's truly our pleasure. And before we talk about your family in more detail, we'd love for you to introduce yourself briefly for our listeners.
My name is Jessica, and I was born and raised in Massachusetts. I am a licensed therapist specializing in infertility. My sign is a Taurus, so you know that I mean business when I say I'm going to do something. And I am a mom via egg donor IVF.
Thank you so much for sharing. So where did your journey to parenthood begin?
So my husband and I bought a house about a year after we got married, and we started talking then about having a child. Uh, it was already on my radar that it might not be easy, and I do have a lot of feelings around why this is. So going back, I had irregular periods even as a teenager. I was put on the medication medroxyprogesterone, and I was supposed to take it every couple of months to induce a period. At the time, my pediatrician was going off a belief that it's bad for the uterus to not get periods, and that this would help my body so that I wouldn't have problems down the road. And it sounds so stupid now, but I really thought that even though my body had something wrong with it, I wasn't getting a regular period, but that we had fixed it because I was on the medroxyprogesterone, and then everything would be fine. And at the same time, I had some shame around my body and my reproductive health because I was taking this medication to begin with. And I actually remember when I got my driver's license, my first drive was actually to the pharmacy to pick up another bottle of these pills. And it said right on it, take to induce menses, which is really embarrassing. And then once I was in my 20s, I switched to birth control pills, and that also ensured that I was having a regular period or withdrawal bleed. So fast forward, I'm 30. I have this empty house. I came off of my birth control and we started trying. So after about 3 months, I still hadn't gotten my period. I was taking pregnancy and ovulation tests most days. There was nothing happening. So I reached out to my doctor. I shared everything I knew from my history, and I was fast tracked to a reproductive endocrinologist. I think probably because I'd had such a long history of irregular periods. We started with the RE for basic fertility tests, and it was not good. My FSH was really high, my AMH was really low, my follicle count was minimal. And so right then we were told that we should go to an IVF clinic and that we would probably need an egg donor if I was going to get pregnant. And I did not even know what to think. It was a wild time.
Yeah, that's tough to hear, like right after the initial baseline testing.
Yep. Yeah. And I was doing a lot of Googling, like, what do these numbers mean? And all those numbers, even Googling was saying, like, yeah, this is not going to happen. So we get our consult with the IVF clinic. They tell us that there is a less than 1% chance of success with my own eggs, which in the infertility world means that no one wants to pay for it. So if I had wanted to try a cycle with my own eggs, it would have been out of pocket. I'm just not someone that takes well to being told that I'm not going to be successful. I really like being the 1% to achieve what others can't. The perfectionist in me, the overachiever in me, the Taurus in me. I really wanted to prove them all wrong. But I also know that I can be a really emotional person, and going down that road of attempting a retrieval and everything that comes with IVF, with the extremely real possibility that it was not going to work anyways, I just felt like I was not going to be able to handle that. And I felt a lot of shame around that. Like it was my fault that I couldn't get pregnant, and my fault that we were not even going to try with my own eggs. So my husband's very logical and fact-based. So he was on board with whatever was going to lead us to the highest chances of success. And so we decided that we would pursue IVF with donor eggs with an anonymous donor and use my husband's sperm. And we were told that our best chances would be with fresh eggs. We were really, really lucky at the time that he worked for a company that had health insurance with good fertility coverage. And I worked for a company that had a non-insurance based fertility benefit that just gave us money to put towards whatever we needed to make this happen.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, I'm very grateful that we had that benefit. Um, so I started researching at that point. I started with egg banks and donor egg agencies and basically just started scrolling and swiping. It is the weirdest thing, kind of like a dating profile where page one has the facts like eye color, height, hobbies, some photos, but then page two is like my grandfather smoked cigarettes and had lung cancer and my cousin has ADHD. And there were so many women. I had a whole notebook full of Punnett squares, just trying to figure out which genes would yield what kinds of traits, which is just a crazy, anxious thing to be doing.
I love it. Got to put that high school biology to work.
Exactly. So like a lot of other intended parents, I wanted to find a donor that looked like me. Each donor agency assigned a case manager who had the job of helping me find what I was looking for, and then the case manager would reach out to those women. And I quickly learned that the reason these agencies brag about having so many options and access to the best potential donors is that they don't remove anyone from their databases. I was swiping and selecting women that had signed up years ago to be a donor, and most did not respond when our case manager reached out.
Whoa. Not like crickets, nothing, not even just like, thanks, I'm not in that space anymore.
Most didn't respond at all. Some
Wow.
some responded to say they're no longer wanting to be a donor. And so here I was thinking, I'm looking at these profiles choosing the person, but that was just one step, me selecting somebody that the case manager would reach out to. And it just made me really angry. Like, don't show me all these profiles and let me fill up my notebook full of Punnett squares when they're not even available. So the first one that did respond to our case manager said that she was interested but not available currently. She said she'd be available the following year because this year she had a lot of bachelorette parties on her calendar, but would be happy to work with us down the road.
Hey, you gotta love her honesty.
So valid on her part, right? Like, don't stop living your life. Like, live it up. But I did kind of a thanks, but no thanks. There I was, like at the gym every day, trying to take the best care of myself. And I know many of us are the same way of just trying to increase our chances of success. And like
Mhm.
life is on hold. It's just a really uh just kind of a funny thing that was, yeah, you go have your bachelorette parties, have fun. So I took her off my short list, but I hope that she had a really good year. So that brings us to the donor that we next connected to, and she looked so much like me. She had the dark curly hair and a really genuine smile, and I loved her, and we were so excited that she was available. And so we moved on to the next phase with her. Part of the fresh egg donor process with our clinic was to have her come in for all the testing, make sure she is a good candidate, and then they can put together the retrieval protocol. So she didn't pass. The egg donor agency actually told me that this young woman would probably also need an egg donor if she wanted to have a baby.
Oh, wow.
And my heart breaks for her. Here she was trying to do this incredible thing, and this is how she learns that she's going to have some type of
Mhm.
fertility challenge if that's ever something she wants to do.
That's going to be really frustrating though, because I mean, similarly to looking through all these profiles of people that aren't even interested in donating anymore, you would think some like baseline testing would have been done ahead of time. So you again weren't going through profiles of people who weren't actually legitimate options.
It definitely highlighted, why so many people go with frozen eggs instead of fresh. This is just something that they said fresh would be our best chance. They had all these reasons. Insurance would cover a retrieval for a fresh donor. Nobody said anything about how hard it is to find a donor, because they just point to these donor agencies that make it seem so easy. We've got all these women, all these names. And that was not the case. I'd be at Panera and see a woman with dark curly hair and be like, can I like ask you a question? I didn't actually do that. I'd be escorted off the premises. But yeah, these donor agencies, they just assume that these women are ready to pop out healthy eggs. And that was not the case. And so this donor that we had matched with, we'd already gone through part of the legal process. We'd already put a lot of money down on this. And just the crazy irony that I thought I'd found this perfect egg donor who was everything I wanted, except that she didn't have eggs, which obviously is the most important part. Really, my only ask. It was a huge setback. So at that point, we went back to the drawing board. This time, I was done with the Punnett squares because I didn't care anymore what she looked like. I wanted someone healthy who had personal and professional interests that showed she was a good person. And that is who we found. The donor we chose was amazing, and it just didn't matter anymore what her hair, her face looked like. She was healthy, she was kind, she was smart and hardworking, and we were so excited when she was approved by our clinic to move forward with us. And so at this time, it had been a year since I was first told that we would need an egg donor. And so naturally, I assumed here on out, everything would be fast and smooth because those are the words that we associate with IVF, right? So our insurance was covering the retrieval and the meds for the donor, and thank goodness. And our clinic had a dedicated nurse for people using third parties. And so she kept us really organized and informed about everything. But it was really weird to have another person go through this retrieval on our behalf, like waiting for another woman to get her period. It was a really emotionally charged process because I was extremely grateful, but also I was jealous. I was the one who wanted to
Yeah.
be doing the stims and the monitoring. Um, and then this pharmacy mishap happened, which I will never forget. The clinic was calling me, telling me that the donor didn't receive the medications, and this was, she'd had her period. We were cycle day one, like off to the races. Yeah, so the clinic says she didn't receive the medications. We might have to push back the cycle. I'm on the phone with the pharmacy. I'm trying to figure it out because they've told me that the meds are delivered. And but when you call a pharmacy, the first thing they need to know is your name and date of birth, but it wasn't my info they needed. I
Mhm.
could give them my name and date of birth, but I'm not taking any of these medications. And so that wouldn't show up anything in their system. And we were just going in circles, and they would keep transferring me to somebody trying to explain what was happening, and everybody name and date of birth. And I'm like, if one more person asks me for my name and date of birth, I'm going to start screaming. But eventually it was
Oh,
sorted out. It turns out that they had delivered the meds to the wrong home, and our donor had actually gone knocking on her neighbors' doors, and eventually found them.
well, that's really sweet of them, but should it not have been necessary?
It's crazy, but that's so sweet of the donor.
We had a few different things like go on, like during the testing and during the cycle, and the donor, she just went above and beyond. It just showed all the qualities. Like,
Hmm.
this is where I might get emotional, but she just, we already loved her and felt so lucky to have her, but she was so kind and just incredible. And I feel so spiritually connected to her that we got to go through this together. And she was also on the phone with the pharmacy that day, also, running in circles. And, we were in different locations and didn't have each other's names, but like we were fighting that battle together. And I feel really connected to her.
I love that.
So the retrieval happened. The numbers were amazing. And in the end, we had 8 chromosomally normal embryos.
Right.
Wonderful.
So what happened after that?
So then it was my turn to go in for the appointments and the testing and the monitoring so we could figure out my protocol for a frozen embryo transfer. I was so anxious. I didn't know how much my ovarian insufficiency would impact the transfer, but the doctor was really optimistic, but also honest that I'd be a poorer responder to the meds. So it'd be a longer cycle. And every step came with delays, and there were med shortages and insurance coding mistakes and prior authorizations taking forever. I was on birth control, which was giving me panic attacks, and I was desperate to come off, but they didn't want me to come off the birth control until we had all the green lights and the meds in hand. And I hated the monitoring appointments. It just seemed like the ultrasounds would take forever. One technician told me that they were harder for me because she said that my uterus is tilted. And that's that's the first time anyone had said that to me the whole time, which had been like 2 years at this point. Everyone said my ovaries were a problem, but my uterus was fine. So being told that my uterus was tilted, it felt like an insult. Like, no, your uterus is tilted.
How dare you?
It wasn't tilted before. Like, if it's tilted, like, you tilted it. Like, go fix it.
Back. Tilted the other way.
Tilted back.
I know. Yes. One time they were like, you have a heart-shaped uterus. And I was like so bitter at the point. I just remember being like, oh, isn't that sweet? Like sarcastic, like, oh, that's cute. Because I hate my uterus. So that's great that it's shaped like a heart.
It just makes you want to, when you're annoyed at somebody, be like, there's something wrong with your uterus. Like, it feels so insulting.
I know. So true.
Every ultrasound, they're just, oh yeah, it's hard to see things. Your tilted uterus and not much going on in those ovaries. So I would just basically introduce myself like, hi, my name is Jessica. My ovaries are retired. My uterus is tilted.
Should just like made a t-shirt to wear. So
I know.
So I did a modified natural cycle, and I'll say now that the first transfer didn't work, and it was devastating. It was like being told all over again that I couldn't get pregnant. I was so upset, thinking that like this was supposed to work. Like, this is the thing that like they said would work, that everything else would not work and this would work, and then it didn't work. The doctor said it was just bad luck and increased all the drugs. So during the second transfer, I was even slower to respond. So somewhere, I think between like cycle day 18 or 19, when the doctor wanted me to increase the meds again, but I didn't have enough. So until that point, we'd used an online pharmacy that delivered the meds to us within a day or two. But because I needed them that night, I had my clinic send the prescription to a local pharmacy near me, but then they were out of stock.
Oh no.
So I called the clinic back. I tell the nurse, like, I don't know what to do. Like, where do we get these meds? And she said, just, I could tell her where I wanted them sent. And my response was, I want them sent to a pharmacy that can fill the order, that has them in stock. And she said she does not have that time to do that research. And so that I should start calling up pharmacies and asking if they have the medication. And she even told me that I can pretend to be a provider so that when I call, they're more likely to answer my questions on what they have in stock.
Whoa, those are some red flags. Did it work though?
Yes, we did get it, but it was, that afternoon is such a blur. And I even said, like, what happens if I can't find this drug? And she said that the cycle would probably end up getting canceled because I needed to start taking it that night.
So stressful.
So stressful. I took the day off. I had my husband take the day off. We were calling pharmacies. I just sent him out. I was, I had a good feeling about the pharmacy right by Boston IVF, the Village Pharmacy, that we had done mail ordered drugs from them before, but I knew that they had a physical location. And so I was on hold with them for probably 30 minutes, but I sent my husband in the car, just go to Waltham, just show up and we'll just ask for this. So it worked. We got the meds. Um,
Good.
so it was probably another 2 weeks of my cycle. I was just such a slow responder to everything that they were doing. And yeah, so another 2 weeks. And then I triggered. We did an embryo transfer a week after that. And that one worked. And now I have an almost 1.5-year-old.
I love it. I love it. So thank you so much for sharing all the ups and downs. And I know a lot of people, including Emily and I, can relate to a lot of different parts of your story. And did you feel like you had emotional support during this time? And if so, what were your biggest sources of support during this time?
I was really open with people, which is a very different thing for me. In the past, I feel like I'd been more isolated or worried that I would burden people or annoy people. And had enough sense to know that this was going to be hard and I'd want people in my corner. So I was talking to people, I was texting people, I was giving them updates, even when I felt like I didn't have the energy to do that. I was in therapy, thank goodness. It just was IVF is its own language, and I felt like I was spending a lot of session time explaining things. I even remember one time talking about follicles. My therapist asked me, "Are you talking about your hair follicles?"
Oh no.
No.
So not a fertility focused clinician, I guess.
No, but someone so helpful
So
and
great
like,
in other ways, yeah. But you're like,
yeah.
okay, we obviously hear this so much, and
Mhm.
like sometimes you're educating clinicians depending on what the condition is or the specifics. A lot of people don't know the basics of reproduction or fertility care for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different language, it's a different world. There's different types of setbacks and barriers. The system was just so focused on one step at a time, but then you learn 4 steps ago, if you'd chosen something different, you'd be in a different place. I've described it like playing a game of chutes and ladders, but you can't see the board. You don't know when you're surrounded by chutes.
That is
That's
great.
perfect.
That's such a great analogy.
And it feels like people just don't give you the information that you need, or they give it to you in an idealized vacuum world without the real specifics.
Hmm.
Just everything. I wanted to share the details of what we went through with our fresh donor and working with the donor agency, because I had no idea some of those complications would happen.
Some of those things you don't even know until you're going through it.
Hmm.
So did you process specifically the donor conception aspect with your therapist or with loved ones?
Yeah. It was a lot of talking about what it meant, what the difference is between, pregnancy and motherhood and genetic connections, and just understanding what was going to be most important to me. I felt like the early conversations, the way that they described the system, it really dehumanized the donor. They talked about her just giving genetic material, but otherwise not having a role and not having importance. And I just didn't see it that way. I value her humanness. I write letters that I have on my computer, and I talk about everything that I'm experiencing with Jillian, and I write about how grateful I am to the donor. And I don't know what role she's going to play in our lives as Jillian gets older, but I like the idea of being able to share these letters with her as like a bridge, as an invitation to be a part of our lives. And I don't want her to feel like she missed out on those early years.
That's really lovely. Are you now? I know you said you went into this doing an anonymous donor. Is that still the case? Are you in touch at all, or do you have a way to get in touch with her? Is it still all pretty separate?
Yeah, so we are not in touch. I'm really a rule follower, and so they gave me a big legal contract, and I'm gonna stick to it. But it does have some language around. It doesn't even have to be when Jillian turns 18. It's about when she's developmentally wanting to know more information, that we reach out to the donor agency, and then they reach out to the donor who can consent or not consent to have her information shared or be in touch with us. And so there's a lot of options in a number of different directions. And so I'm really open to seeing where that goes. But I I think probably because I used to work with kids, I have a really good understanding of what is important for children and knowing their story. And I'm really open with Jillian about this, and she's gonna read these letters too, and maybe she can decide if we send them out. We find the donor and we mail those letters to her.
I love that. And obviously, there's so many lovely books too that help introduce this concept to children. But I also think, and it sounds like you're doing that already, is just talking to them about how wanted they are and were, and how someone helped you be able to do this. And I think that must be such a more natural conversation to have, since you feel that way in your heart as well. You can just tell you feel that way so strongly that that's going to come through when you're talking to Jillian about it as well. So
Yeah.
that's nice. And of course, now there's really no such thing as truly, truly anonymous. So I
Yes.
think it sounds really lovely to me how you framed the future, that it's sort of, everyone involved is empowered to be part of the decision, and it's one that might evolve over time, which I think is great.
It was when I had to abandon the Punnett squares that I think that's when I had to do my deepest work around what is most important to me and why. And it was about health, and it was about just goodness, and hair color, eye color, like none of that stuff mattered. And that was a tough mountain for me to climb. I remember
Yeah.
my mother used to tell me stories about being in the grocery store with me, and people would stop her and comment on how beautiful my hair was. And I just always thought like, oh, maybe I'll have a kid with curly hair like mine. And the craziest thing is that this is I will bring Jillian to the grocery store and people say, oh my gosh, look how curly her hair is. She's so beautiful. And so I got what I wanted anyways.
That's awesome. That's
Oh,
awesome. And to me, it's like, obviously, I feel like all of it is valid. Like if you really want to try to find a donor that looks like you, it's like, I feel obviously that is so valid. You've already, you're grieving aspects of this already. So if there's something that can be a comfort to you, I think that's great. But I also think it's so beautiful, the transition you went through of really having to reflect on, like, at the end of the day, what is most important to me, and like, I'm sure, I mean, you do have beautiful curly hair, but I'm sure like the most important parts of you obviously are internal. And that's what you pass on as a parent, which is lucky for Jillian that she has that in her mom, So I think that's really great. I love that she has the curly hair though. That's so sweet.
Yeah, I mean, she's this extra special girl because it took
Yeah.
three people to make her, and three people that all have like such amazing strengths.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. So how did your own personal experiences influence your professional career?
Like I mentioned at the top, so I'm a licensed therapist, and so previously I was working mostly with kids, mostly kids with trauma histories, and I did a lot of work with them on their healing and making sure that they understood that their lives didn't have to be defined by their trauma. And so when I started going through my journey, it was immediately clear that this is the work that I wanted to do. I wanted to help other people heal from this, to understand they were not defined by their infertility, and that the outcomes of their journey were not going to define what their worth or their future could hold. My practice is called Empress Counseling. It is named that after uh, the Empress Tarot Card, which represents nurture and maternal energy, and often is depicted with a pregnant woman on it.
that's really cool. I didn't realize that's where the name came from.
Mhm. I just feel like infertility is like nothing else. It's a very different beast. If you're not careful, it will swallow you whole. The coping strategies that maybe we used for other rough patches in our lives, they don't work anymore, or maybe they're not accessible because of how invasive and time consuming and all consuming infertility is. So you might not be able to go for a run. You might feel too sick, or you're not going to
Mhm.
be able to go out for Taco Tuesday with the girls. And so people need to learn different ways of coping and surviving. And it just, I say this all the time. It is like nothing else. It is a different world.
Are there any tools or coping strategies that you tend to recommend to folks?
Yeah, so I do a lot of compassion focused therapy. And so that means that every thought, every feeling deserves to be heard and deserves to take up the space that it needs. We talk about ways to practice real self-care and compassion, and not just the checklist of like drinking tea or getting a massage, but to fully acknowledge that you are human and you're dealing with hurt and unmet needs, and that every time you push yourself and pretend that you're fine, you're reinforcing that your needs are not important and that other people's needs come first.
I love that.
I know. I love that. I loved everything you were just saying.
Yeah, it's about giving yourself permission to have needs and that those needs are valid and important.
I love that so much.
It's so powerful when you can say, I feel good about what I've done. And if I didn't do any of it, I'm still enough. And holding those two truths.
I love it. I mean, I was struck by a lot of what you were saying, which really like resonated is like so much of this. I mean, it's understandable in high school, everything feels shameful. Like just someone looking at you the wrong way is like, oh my God, what's wrong with, but it's like shame is like this thread running through a lot of these experiences for a lot of us and for you, where it's like, we did nothing that we have to be ashamed of. Like but it's just, especially when you're younger, anything that is the path you weren't expecting to have to travel feels so huge. Like, oh my God, why do I have to do this way? Why do I have to go this bumpy road when everyone else seems to be going this smooth road? But it sounds like over time you were more gentle with yourself. And now it sounds like it's a core part of your practice as well, which is so nice.
Yeah, and I think when we feel like we don't have control, it's very uncomfortable. And so often we use blame, whether it's blaming others or blaming ourselves, as a way to feel like we are in control. And these are the rules. If you do X, then Y happens. And it's really hard to sometimes just accept that we live in a world where bad things can happen to you and it wasn't your fault and there wasn't anything you could have done differently, and to still be okay with that, or to be okay to not be okay.
That's amazing. So I know you said you're based in Massachusetts, but if I remember correctly, you are licensed in a few other states as well.
Yeah, so I'm also licensed in Washington State and Arizona, and hopefully Rhode Island soon. They're down the street from
Oh,
me, so
cool.
I wanted to get that up and running.
That's awesome. Well, definitely let us know when that happens so we can update your listing in the directory. If somebody is interested in kind of learning more about your practice and getting in touch, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so I do have a website at empresscounseling.com. I'm also on Instagram at Empress Counseling. So there's plenty of ways to reach out to me, whether it's to actually talk about therapy or even just to talk about the egg donor journey, or if there's other egg donor moms out there that want to connect. I'm really open, and I just love the idea of building community and supporting each other, because the whole it takes a village thing, like we know that that's true for parenting, but it was also true in my case for conceiving, and is true for many others as well.
Well, in case you're ever interested, our donor conception group, the second session of each month, is open to people who are pregnant and parenting to kind of continue that community. Because again, like with our parenting after groups and parenting newborns groups, the need for support doesn't go away when you have a child in your arms. It just, the support that you need needs to look a little bit different. So you're definitely welcome to check that out anytime.
I appreciate that. I've worked with a lot of people that maybe this chapter has closed and they're not in the thick of it anymore, but they're still really impacted, because infertility just teaches us these really painful lies about ourselves and our bodies, and it takes a lot of healing to rebuild that trust with our bodies.
Yeah, 100%. So what's one thing that you would say to somebody who's just starting out on their journey?
I would say be intentional about where you invest your energy because you only have so much of it. It's a finite amount. So if you need to add in one area of your life, you need to subtract in another. And that means that your boundaries or your social calendars might look different because using your energy to do all the things that you think you're supposed to do, especially for the people pleasers and overachievers like me, it's going to leave nothing left for you. And then for people who are overwhelmed by infertility, and like I said before, their tools or their coping strategies that they used to use don't work anymore. You need to invest the energy into learning new things that are going to help.
I love that. Thank you. The flip side to that question is what's one thing that you wish people would never say when someone shares with them that they're struggling to build their family?
It is such an important question because so many of us feel like we are only understood by each other. So I'm going to give a really personal answer that's actually directed at people within the infertility community. And that is to try and stop using language around giving up. When I first tried to find infertility community support, I read this phrase so many times and in so many ways, a lot having to do with giving up on having a biological child. And it made me feel like those spaces weren't safe for me. It made me feel like I didn't try hard enough, that there was something you know, like giving up, there's just shame in that phrasing. And so I think for someone who wants to keep doing what they're doing and they have the capacity for it, I encourage that and just say that you're not ready for that chapter to end or you're not ready to close the book on that or have that season end. And for people that are ready to end treatment with their own eggs or end treatment completely, that you are ready for the next season, that you're ready for this chapter to end. And I just think that that language is so much less shaming than the giving up.
I love that so much. And you're right. That's such an important reframing of that conversation because you're right. It's not moving on to a path that you maybe weren't expecting to go down, isn't giving up. It's trying another path. It's so important that we honor that all of them are equally as legitimate. And by using language like giving up, it does almost makes it seem like there might be some sort of hierarchy and one is less than another, which is definitely not the case. Well, this has been such a lovely conversation.
I want you to be my therapist, but I also want you to be my therapist like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I still need one, but I really needed you 20 years ago when you were a baby.
We all need therapy. And
know.
I think it's really powerful transformational work when you can, understand not just what your thoughts are telling you that maybe aren't so helpful, but what's being reinforced, like
Right.
people pleasing. We got to look at that.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much, Jessica. It was so wonderful talking with you today. And I know there's a lot in this episode that is going to be really valuable to all of our listeners.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It was really, really good.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
We hope you'll join us next time for more family building stories and resources. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts to make sure you never miss an episode. And follow us on social media at allpathsfb or visit our website, allpathsfb.org, for more information about our work. All Paths Family Building is so grateful to the members of our circle of support who are vital to our ability to provide emotional support, education, and advocacy that is open to anyone struggling to grow their families. Today, we want to give a special shout out to our platinum sponsor, EMD Serono. Thank you for joining us for this episode. Please help spread the word so that anyone who is struggling to grow their family can join the conversation. It's an honor to walk with you on your family building journey.